I never thought I'd be the kind of woman who'd stand invisible in her own home, but that's exactly what happened on a sunny Saturday afternoon in May. And what I heard in those few minutes of being unseen would change everything. But before I begin my story, let me know in the comments where you are listening from and what time it is. I just want to know I'm not alone in this. And if you feel moved by what you hear, consider subscribing. It helps more people become aware of the reality of elder abuse. Now let me tell you what really happened. My name is Eleanor Grace Thompson, and I'm 72 years old. For the past 5 years since my husband Charles passed, I've been living alone in the house we built together back in 1983. It's a beautiful colonial-style home in Maple Ridge, a neighborhood that's become quite desirable over the years. Charles and we chose this lot carefully, planted every tree in the yard, picked out every fixture and tile. This house holds 40 years of memories. Birthday parties, holiday dinners, the echo of my son Robert's laughter as a child running through these halls. I worked as a nurse for 37 years, mostly in pediatrics. Charles was a civil engineer. We weren't wealthy, but we were comfortable, and we were smart with our money. We paid off this house 15 years ago. After Charles died, the house became even more precious to me. It's not just a structure of wood and brick. It's the life we built together, the last place I can feel close to him. That Saturday started like any other weekend when my son Robert and his wife Chelsea visited. They'd been coming by more frequently lately, which I'd initially taken as a blessing. After feeling quite lonely following Charles's passing, I was grateful for the company. Robert is my only child, and at 45, he's done well for himself. He's a CPA with his own firm, and Chelsea, well, she's a real estate agent. Quite successful, from what I understand. "Mom, we're here," Robert called out as he let himself in with his key. I was in the kitchen, preparing refreshments. I'd made lemonade from scratch and baked my famous butter cookies, the ones Robert loved as a boy. "In the kitchen, sweetheart?" I called back, wiping my hands on my apron. Robert came in first, giving me a quick hug and a kiss on the cheek. He's tall like his father was, with the same warm brown eyes. But lately, those eyes seemed distracted, always looking past me rather than at me. Chelsea followed, perfectly put together as always in white linen pants and a silk blouse, her blonde hair styled in that effortless way that probably took an hour to achieve. "Eleanor," she said with her practiced smile, giving me an air kiss near my cheek. She never called me Mom, even though I'd invited her to years ago. "Something smells wonderful." "Just cookies," I said, pleased. "Robert's favorites." "Please, sit down. I'll bring everything to the living room." "Oh, let me help you with that," Chelsea said, but her tone had that edge to it. The one that made her offer sound less like genuine help and more like she was humoring an old woman who might drop the tray. She'd been doing that a lot lately. Hovering when I carried things, exchanging glances with Robert when I forgot a name or misplaced my reading glasses. We settled in the living room, the space I'd decorated with care over the years. Family photos lined the mantel, Afghans my mother had crocheted were draped over the couch, and Charles's favorite reading chair sat by the window, still positioned to catch the afternoon light. I couldn't bring myself to move it. "So Mom," Robert began, accepting a glass of lemonade, "Chelsea and I wanted to talk to you about something." My heart did a little flutter. Talks that started this way were never simple conversations. "Of course, dear. What is it?" Chelsea leaned forward, her expression carefully arranged into concern. "Eleanor, we've been thinking about you living here all alone. This house is quite large for one person, and with the stairs and the maintenance." "I manage just fine," I interjected, perhaps a bit too quickly. We'd had versions of this conversation before. "Of course you do," Robert said in that soothing tone, the one you'd use with a child. "But we've been looking at some wonderful senior living communities. They have activities, social opportunities, people your own age. You wouldn't be so isolated." Senior living, they meant a facility, they meant taking me out of my home. "I'm not isolated," I said, keeping my voice steady. "I have my garden club, my book group, my friend Maggie visits regularly, and I like my space. This is my home." The Chelsea and Robert exchanged one of those looks. I'd been seeing those looks more often lately. The kind that excluded me, that spoke volumes without words. "We're just concerned about you," Chelsea said, reaching over to pat my hand. Her touch was cool, impersonal. "Last month, you forgot about that doctor's appointment. And Robert said you mentioned misplacing your medication twice last week." Had I told him that? I tried to remember. My memory had been a bit fuzzy lately, but I'd attributed it to stress and grief. "Everyone forgets things sometimes," I said. "Of course," Robert agreed too readily. "We're not saying anything is wrong. We just want to make sure you're safe and comfortable. These communities are really nice, Mom. They handle all the maintenance, the cooking, everything. You wouldn't have to worry about anything." What they weren't saying hung in the air between us, and we could sell this house. The property value in Maple Ridge had skyrocketed. I knew this because Chelsea mentioned it frequently, always in passing, always casual. Houses on your street are going for over 800,000 now, can you believe it? Or, the Hendersons sold their place, similar to yours, for nearly $1 million. I knew what my house was worth. I also knew that Robert and Chelsea had been eyeing it for a while, though they'd never been quite this direct about it. I appreciate your concern, I said carefully, but I'm not ready to leave my home. I'm healthy, I'm active, and I'm quite capable of taking care of myself and this property. Another look passed between them. Chelsea's smile tightened almost imperceptibly. Well, there's no rush, Robert said, backing off with practiced ease. We just want you to think about it. Maybe we could tour a few places together? Just to look? Maybe, I said noncommittally, reaching for a cookie I didn't really want. The conversation moved to safer topics. Robert's business, Chelsea's latest real estate sales, the weather. But something had shifted in the room. I felt it in the way Chelsea's eyes kept drifting around the living room, as if she were mentally staging it for sale. I felt it in the way Robert kept checking his phone, distracted and distant. After about an hour, Chelsea excused herself to take a phone call. It's a client, she explained, already pulling out her phone. I'll just step onto the porch, you know how it is, Eleanor, real estate never sleeps. She laughed at her own joke. Robert went to use the bathroom, leaving me alone in the living room. I began gathering the glasses and plates, stacking them on the tray. It was then I realized I'd left the serving napkins in the garage, where I kept my extra party supplies. The garage is attached to the house, accessible through a door in the kitchen. I walked through, opened the door, and flicked on the light. The napkins were right where I'd left them on a shelf near the door. I grabbed them and was about to head back inside when I heard Chelsea's voice. She must have walked around to the side of the house, right near the garage window, which was open to let in the spring air. Her voice carried clearly through the screen. I'm telling you, Linda, it's just a matter of time now, she was saying, her voice completely different from the warm, concerned tone she'd used with me minutes earlier. This voice was cold, calculating. The old lady is slipping. Robert's finally seeing it too. I froze, the napkins clutched in my hand. We've been working on this for months, Chelsea continued. Little things, you know. Moving her pills around so she thinks she's forgetting where she put them. Loosing some bills so they pile up and she looks disorganized. Robert's been documenting everything. Every time she repeats herself, every time she can't find something. We're building a case. My heart began to pound so hard I could hear it in my ears. Once we get her declared incompetent or convince her to move into one of those facilities, we can finally sell this place. Do you know what houses in this neighborhood are going for? We're looking at close to $1 million, Linda. $1 million just sitting here while she rattles around in it alone. There was a pause as she listened to whoever this Linda was. Oh, she'll fight it at first, but Robert's her only family. Who else does she have? That friend Maggie, please. Once we get power of attorney, and it won't matter what the old lady wants. Robert said once she's gone or in a facility, we can finally upgrade our lives. New house, private school for the kids, maybe that vacation property in the Hamptons we've been looking at. Another pause. No, she has no idea. Robert's been brilliant about it, actually. Playing the concerned son, suggesting she's declining. And honestly, with the way we've been moving things around, she probably does think she's losing it. It's perfect. Chelsea laughed, and the sound of it, so casual, so pleased with herself, made my blood run cold. Trust me, she said. Once the old lady's gone, we'll finally get the house, and she'll never see it coming. Look, I have to go. Talk later. I stood in that garage, surrounded by 40 years of accumulated memories. Boxes of Christmas decorations, Charles's old tools, Robert's childhood bicycle that I'd never had the heart to get rid of, and felt the floor shift beneath my feet. Not from physical instability. From the sudden, devastating clarity of what had been happening in my own home, right under my nose. The misplaced medications, the bills that mysteriously went missing. The way Chelsea and Robert kept suggesting I was forgetting things, declining, unable to cope. It wasn't my failing memory. It wasn't age catching up with me. It was them. It had been them all along. My own son and his wife had been systematically sabotaging me, gaslighting me, setting me up to appear incompetent so they could take my home. So they could put me away somewhere and profit from the house Charles and I had built with our own hands and our life savings. I don't know how long I stood there. It might have been seconds or minutes. But when I finally moved, when I turned off that garage light and walked back into my kitchen, I was a different woman than the one who'd left it. I was done being invisible. I was done being dismissed. And I was certainly done being manipulated in my own home. I set those napkins down on the kitchen counter with steady hands. Then I walked back into the living room where Robert was scrolling through his phone, and I smiled. Chelsea's still on her call, I asked pleasantly. Yeah, you know how clients are. Robert said without looking up. Oh, I'm learning, I replied. I'm learning a lot about people these days. Something in my tone made him glance up, but I kept my expression neutral. Chelsea came back inside a moment later, all smiles again. Sorry about that, she said. Where were we? I said, still smiling. I'm feeling a bit tired. Would you two mind if we cut the visit short today? I think I need to rest. Of course, Robert said, standing immediately, concern flooding his face. Are you okay? Do you need us to stay? No, I assured him. Just a bit of a headache. Nothing serious. You two go on. Thank you for visiting. They left shortly after, with Chelsea reminding me to think about what we discussed, and Robert promising to call and check on me the next day. I watched from the window as they pulled away in their expensive SUV, the one that still had payments on it, no doubt. The one they were probably hoping to pay off with my house. Only when their car disappeared around the corner did I allow myself to sit down, my legs suddenly weak. I sat in Charles's chair, the one by the window, and I let myself feel everything. The betrayal, the hurt, the fury. But I didn't cry. Not yet, because I had work to do. I pulled out my phone and scrolled to a name I hadn't called in over a week: Maggie Foster. My best friend since nursing school, the woman who'd been at my side through every major moment of my adult life. The woman who'd also been warning me for the past year that something wasn't right with how Chelsea and Robert were treating me. The woman who, as it happened, was a retired estate attorney. I said when she answered. I need your help. And I need you to come over right away. What's wrong? She asked immediately, her voice sharp with concern. Everything. Said nothing. I'll explain when you get here. But Maggie, I need to make some changes, legal changes, and I need to do it now before they make their next move. I'm on my way, she said without hesitation. Ellie, whatever's happened, we'll handle it. You're not alone. As I hung up, I looked around my living room, at the photos of Robert as a baby, as a boy, graduating college. At the life Charles and I had built, the home we'd filled with love. They thought I was a foolish old woman. They thought I was slipping, incompetent, easy to manipulate. They had no idea what was coming. And honestly, neither did I, not yet. But I was about to find out exactly how strong Eleanor Grace Thompson could be when someone tried to take everything she'd built. Maggie arrived within 30 minutes, letting herself in with the key I'd given her years ago. She found me still sitting in Charles's chair, staring out the window but not really seeing the garden beyond. Ellie, she said softly, setting her purse down and coming to kneel beside the chair. At 70, Maggie was still sharp as a tack, with steel, gray hair cut in a practical bob and eyes that missed nothing. Talk to me. So I did. I told her everything. The conversation I'd overheard, Chelsea's cold calculation, the months of small incidents that suddenly made terrible sense. The medications moved, the bills that disappeared, the subtle suggestions that I was declining, forgetting, becoming incapable. Maggie's face grew darker with each word. By the time I finished, she was pacing my living room, her jaw set in that way I recognized from our nursing days when she was preparing to fight for a patient. Those absolute. She stopped herself, took a breath. Elder abuse. That's what this is, Ellie. Financial exploitation and emotional abuse. It's not just morally wrong. It's illegal. They're my family, Maggie, I said quietly. Robert is my son. Robert is a grown man who's allowing his wife to manipulate and gaslight his own mother for money, Maggie said bluntly. She'd never been one to soften hard truths. I'm sorry, honey, but you need to hear this clearly. What they're doing isn't just unkind. It's criminal. I nodded slowly. I know. But what can I do? If I confront them directly, they'll just deny it. And they're right about one thing. Robert is my only family. If I accuse them, I lose my son. You've already lost your son, Maggie said gently, sitting down across from me. The Robert you raised wouldn't do this. The man who's doing this, he's already gone, Ellie. The question is whether you're going to let them destroy you in the process. The words hurt because they were true. I thought about the little boy who used to bring me dandelions from the yard, who'd cried at his father's funeral and held my hand through the whole service. Where had that boy gone? When had he become a man who could scheme to take his mother's home? So what do? I asked. Maggie leaned forward, her expression turning focused. First, we protect your assets. Immediately. Then we gather evidence of what they've been doing. And finally, we make sure they understand that you are not the vulnerable target they think you are. Over the next hour, Maggie walked me through the reality of my situation. As a retired estate attorney, she'd seen cases like mine before, adult children who viewed their aging parents as obstacles rather than people, who saw inheritance as something owed to them rather than earned. Do you have a will? She asked. Yes, from years ago. Everything goes to Robert, and power of attorney. I was about to sign papers giving it to Robert, I admitted. Chelsea kept suggesting it would make things easier if something happened to me. The papers are in my desk drawer. I just hadn't gotten around to it. Maggie's eyes widened. Thank God you overheard that conversation when you did. Ellie, if you'd signed that power of attorney, they could have started moving your assets immediately. They could have sold this house right out from under you, and legally, you'd have very little recourse. The thought made me feel sick. How close had I come? Another week, another month. Here's what we're gonna do, Maggie said, pulling out a legal pad from her bag. Even retired, she was always prepared. Tomorrow, first thing Monday morning, we're going to my former law firm. My prodigy Sarah is still there, and she specializes in elder law. We're going to do several things. She began writing as she talked. First, we'll create an irrevocable trust for this house. You'll live in it for the rest of your life, with complete control, but when you pass it will go directly to a charity of your choosing, bypassing probate entirely. Robert can't contest it and Chelsea can't get her hands on it. An irrevocable trust, I repeated. That sounds so final. It is, Maggie said. That's the point. We're removing the target from their sights. There's no house for them to manipulate you out of because legally, you won't own it in the traditional sense. The trust will. But you'll have full rights to live here, maintain it, everything. It just won't be part of your estate when you die. I thought about this. The house was supposed to be Robert's inheritance, something to give him after I was gone. But what good was an inheritance given to someone who was actively trying to take it before you were ready to give it? What charity? I asked. Entirely, but I'd suggest something meaningful to you, maybe something related to nursing or elder advocacy. Or, Charles Alzheimer's Research Foundation, I said suddenly. My husband had been terrified of Alzheimer's, had seen what it did to his own father. He'd left money to research in his will. The foundation that researches and supports Alzheimer's patients. That's where I want the house proceeds to go. Maggie smiled a fierce, proud smile. Perfect. Poetic justice, really, given that they've been trying to make you seem mentally incompetent. What else? I asked. I was starting to feel something I hadn't felt in months. A sense of control. We'll revise your will entirely. Set up healthcare directives that specifically do not name Robert or Chelsea. I'll help you choose someone trustworthy. We'll also create a living trust for your other assets, your savings, investments, everything. Same principle. Protected. They're going to be furious, I said quietly. Yes, Maggie agreed. They are. But Ellie, they don't get to profit from abusing you. They don't get to gaslight you into thinking you're incompetent and then take everything you've worked for. This isn't about punishing Robert. This is about protecting yourself. But she paused, then added more gently, and honey, this is also about showing your son that actions have consequences. Maybe, and I say maybe, if he realizes he can't manipulate you, if he loses what he was counting on, he might take a long, hard look at who he's become. It's not likely, but it's possible. But even if he doesn't, you'll know you stood up for yourself. I sat with that for a moment. Part of me still wanted to believe this was all a misunderstanding, that Robert was just misguided, that he'd come to his senses. But I'd heard Chelsea's voice. I'd heard the calculation, the coldness, the casual cruelty of discussing me like I was already gone, and Robert was letting it happen, participating in it, documenting my supposed decline for their case. Okay, I said. Let's do it? All of it? Maggie squeezed my hand. That's my girl. Now, we also need to think about evidence. What they're doing is illegal, and we need to document it. How? Do you have your medical records? Records showing you're cognitively sound. I had a full physical 3 months ago. Dr. Patterson said I was healthy as a horse, mentally and physically. Perfect. We'll get those records. We'll also have Sarah arrange for a full cognitive assessment from a neutral third party. Just to have it on record that you're completely competent. It'll cost a few $100s, but it's worth it. And the other things. The moved medications, the missing bills. Maggie thought for a moment. When was the last time they were here before today? Wednesday afternoon. Chelsea came by alone, said she was just checking on me. And things went missing after that visit. I thought back. Yes. I couldn't find my blood pressure medication that evening. I finally found it in the bathroom cabinet instead of my nightstand where I always keep it, and there was a utility bill I'd sworn I'd paid, but then I got a late notice. Do you have security cameras? No. Charles always said we didn't need them in this neighborhood. We're installing them tomorrow, Maggie said decisively. Basic system, covering the main rooms and entrances. Not to spy on your son, but to document what happens in your own home. If they come back and start moving things again, we'll have proof. It felt surreal, talking about surveillance in my own home to protect myself from my own child. But it also felt necessary. There's something else, Maggie said, her expression turning serious. You need to be prepared for what comes next. When they find out you've protected your assets, they're going to escalate. They might get angry. They might make accusations. Chelsea, especially, sounds like someone who doesn't like losing. What kind of accusations? They might claim you're being manipulated by me. They might say you're not in your right mind to make these decisions. They might even try to pursue guardianship, claiming you're incompetent. My stomach dropped. Can they do that? They can try. But with your medical records, a fresh cognitive assessment, and documentation of your sound decision-making, they won't succeed. It would be a waste of their money and time. But they might try out of spite. This is really happening, I said softly. My son is really doing this to me. Maggie moved to sit on the arm of Charles's chair, putting her arm around my shoulders. I know, honey. I know it hurts. But you're not alone and you're not helpless. You're Eleanor Grace Thompson. You raised a child, nursed countless patients through their darkest times, built a life with Charles that was full of love and meaning. You're stronger than they think. Stronger than you think, right now. I leaned into her, letting myself take comfort from her presence. Maggie had been there when I buried my parents, when I married Charles, when Robert was born, when Charles died. She'd been the constant in my adult life, the sister I'd chosen. What do I do about Robert? I asked. Do I tell him I know? Do I confront them? Not yet, Maggie advised. First, we secure everything legally. Get all your ducks in a row. Then when you're ready, when everything is protected, you can decide how you want to handle them. But you confront them from a position of strength, not vulnerability. You make sure they can't hurt you first. When do we start? Tomorrow. Sarah works some Sundays for important clients, and I'll make sure she knows this is urgent. We'll go to her office, get everything drawn up. It'll take a few days to finalize everything. The trust needs to be properly filed. Papers need to be notarized, accounts need to be retitled. But we can have the essential documents ready by Monday or Tuesday. That fast. When you know what you're doing, and you have the right attorney, yes. And Ellie, you also need to be prepared for this to cost money. Attorneys, setting up trusts, cognitive assessments, we're probably looking at several $1,000s. I have savings, I said. Money Charles and I had set aside for emergencies. I suppose this qualified. Whatever it costs, it's worth it. That's the spirit. We spent another hour going over details. Maggie made lists, asked me questions about my assets, about my wishes for healthcare decisions, about who I'd want to make decisions if I truly couldn't someday. Not Robert, we agreed. Maggie herself, with a backup designated to her daughter Emily, who was a doctor and had always been kind to me. By the time Maggie left, it was early evening. She made me promise to call her if Robert or Chelsea tried to visit unexpectedly, and to not sign anything, agree to anything, or make any major statements until we'd secured everything legally. Get some rest, she said at the door. Tomorrow's going to be a long day, but a good one. You're taking your life back, Ellie. After she left, I sat in the dimming light of my living room, surrounded by the life I'd built. On the mantel, a photo of Robert at his college graduation smiled out at me, Charles's arm around his shoulders, both of them beaming with pride and hope. When had things changed? When had my son stopped being that young man full of promise, and become someone who could conspire against his own mother? Or had I simply not wanted to see it? Had there been signs all along that I'd excused, explained away, rationalized, because he was my child and I loved him? My phone rang, startling me. Robert's name appeared on the screen. I considered not answering, but that would be unusual. I needed to appear normal until everything was in place. Hello, sweetheart, I answered, proud of how steady my voice sounded. Hi, Mom, just calling to check on you. You seemed tired earlier. Are you feeling okay? Was he genuinely concerned, or was he documenting another instance of me seeming off for their case? Just a small headache, I said. Nothing serious. I took some aspirin and rested. I'm fine now. Good. Listen, Chelsea and I were talking, and we really think you should let us schedule some tours of those senior communities. Just to look. No pressure. I'll think about it, I said noncommittally. We're just worried about you, Mom. This house is a lot for you to manage alone. I appreciate your concern, I said, and meant it. Even if his motives were wrong, even if he was being manipulated by Chelsea, some part of me wanted to believe my son still cared, somewhere beneath it all. Okay, well, get some rest. Love you too, I said automatically, and hung up. Did he love me? Or did he love what I represented? A future windfall, a path to the life he wanted with Chelsea. I didn't have the answer. But I knew this love wasn't supposed to involve manipulation, gaslighting, or scheming. Love was supposed to protect, not exploit. Charles's voice seemed to echo in my memory. Stand up for yourself, Ellie. You're stronger than you think. You'd said that to me years ago when I'd been dealing with a difficult supervisor at the hospital, someone who was taking credit for my work. Charles had encouraged me to speak up, to document everything, to fight for myself. I'd done it then. I could do it now. Tomorrow everything would change. Tomorrow I'd start protecting myself. But tonight, in the quiet of my home, I let myself grieve for the relationship I thought I had with my son, and for the trust that had been shattered so completely. Then I dried my eyes, straightened my shoulders, and began making my own lists of what needed to be done. Eleanor Grace Thompson was not going down without a fight. Sunday morning arrived with brilliant sunshine streaming through my bedroom windows. I'd barely slept, my mind racing through everything that had happened, everything that was about to happen. But when I rose and looked at myself in the bathroom mirror, I didn't see a frightened old woman staring back. I saw someone who was done being a victim. I dressed carefully in a navy blue pantsuit Charles had always said made me look distinguished. If I was going to take control of my life, I was going to look the part. By the time Maggie arrived at 9 o'clock, I had coffee ready and a folder of documents I'd spent the early morning gathering. Deeds, bank statements, insurance policies, my will, the unsigned power of attorney papers. "You look ready for battle," Maggie said approvingly as she came in. "I am," I replied and found that I meant it. Sarah Chen's office was in a modern building downtown, all glass and steel. Even on a Sunday the parking lot had several cars. Maggie had called ahead, and Sarah was waiting for us in a corner office with a view of the city. She was younger than I'd expected, maybe 40, with intelligent eyes and a firm handshake. "Mrs. Thompson," she said warmly, "Maggie's told me a bit about your situation. I want you to know that what's being done to you is unconscionable, and we're going to make sure you're protected." We sat down, and I told the story again. Sarah listened without interrupting, taking notes on her laptop. When I finished, she sat back and nodded. "This is unfortunately more common than people realize," she said. "Adult children viewing their parents' assets as their own future property, getting impatient, sometimes taking active steps to accelerate the process. What makes your case particularly egregious is the gaslighting, the deliberate attempts to make you question your own competence." "Can we stop them?" I asked. "Absolutely. And not just stop them. We can make it impossible for them to benefit from this behavior. Let me walk you through what I'm proposing." For the next hour, Sarah outlined a comprehensive plan. The irrevocable trust for the house, ensuring it would go to the Alzheimer's Foundation Charles had supported. A living trust for my other assets, my savings, investment accounts, the small inheritance I'd received from my parents. Healthcare directives naming Maggie as my primary decision maker if I ever became incapacitated, with her daughter Emily as backup. "What about my son?" I asked. "Shouldn't he be somewhere in these documents?" Sarah's expression was kind but firm. "Mrs. Thompson, normally I'd agree. Family should be included. But your son has demonstrated that he's willing to exploit you financially and emotionally. Including him in any legal capacity gives him power he's already proven he'll abuse. We can revisit this later if circumstances change, if he shows genuine remorse and changed behavior. But right now, he needs to be completely excluded for your own protection." It hurt to hear, but I knew she was right. "Now, about the house," Sarah continued. "The trust will be structured so that you have complete control during your lifetime. You can live here, rent it out, renovate it, whatever you want. But you can't sell it and pocket the money, and when you pass, it goes directly to the charity. This removes it entirely from your estate and makes it impossible for anyone to contest." "How long does this take?" "The documents themselves. I can have them drafted by tomorrow afternoon. We'll need to notarize everything, file the trust with the county, retitle your accounts. The whole process from start to finish, maybe a week to 10 days to have everything completely locked down." "That fast?" "When there's urgency and clear direction, yes. Maggie mentioned you're concerned they might make a move soon." I thought about Chelsea's phone call, her casual certainty that it was just a matter of time.
Yes.
"I think they're planning to push harder to get me to sign power of attorney. Maybe try to have me declared incompetent. Then we need to move quickly. I'm also going to recommend we have you evaluated by Dr. Patricia Morrison. She's a geriatric psychiatrist who specializes in cognitive assessments. She's testified in court many times about competency issues. If your son and daughter-in-law try to claim you weren't of sound mind when you made these changes, Dr. Morrison's evaluation will shut that down immediately." "When can she see me?" Sarah checked her phone. "I'll call her today. She's excellent about accommodating urgent situations, probably Tuesday or Wednesday at the latest." We spent another 2 hours going through details, signing preliminary documents, discussing my wishes. Sarah asked questions I'd never considered. What if I needed long-term care someday? What about funeral arrangements? What about personal possessions, family heirlooms? "The house and major assets are protected through the trust," Sarah explained. "But you should also create a detailed inventory of personal items and specify who gets what. Not legally binding for everything. But it makes your wishes clear. Do you have jewelry, artwork, family photos you want certain people to have?" I thought about my mother's wedding ring, Charles's watch, the photo albums documenting Robert's childhood. "I need to think about that." "Take your time. But I'd suggest doing it sooner rather than later, and keeping the inventory somewhere safe. Not in the house where someone could access it and claim you promised them things." The thought of Robert or Chelsea rifling through my belongings claiming whatever they wanted, made my skin crawl. I'll work on that this week. By the time we left Sarah's office, it was early afternoon. My head was spinning with information, but I also felt something I hadn't felt in months: hope. I was taking action. I was protecting myself. Lunch? Maggie suggested. You need to eat, and we should talk about the next steps. We went to a small cafe near the office, ordered sandwiches we barely touched, and sat by the window overlooking the street. How are you holding up? Maggie asked gently. I feel like I'm betraying my son, I admitted, even though I know he betrayed me first. Is that crazy? It's not crazy. It's being a parent. You spent 45 years loving that boy, raising him, putting his needs first. Those instincts don't just disappear because he's hurting you now. But, Maggie continued, being a parent doesn't mean being a doormat. It doesn't mean letting your child abuse you. Robert is a grown man who's making terrible choices. You didn't create this situation, he did. You're just responding to protect yourself. What if he never speaks to me again after this? The thought terrified me more than losing the house. Then he was never going to be the son you deserve anyway, Maggie said bluntly. Ellie, listen to me. If Robert's relationship with you is contingent on getting your money, then it's not a real relationship. It's exploitation dressed up as family. You deserve better than that. I knew she was right, but knowing something intellectually and accepting it emotionally were two very different things. When do we tell them? I asked. After everything is finalized and filed. After Dr. Morrison's evaluation. After every single legal protection is in place and there's nothing they can do to change it. Then you can decide how you want to handle it. A family meeting? If that's what you want. Or a letter. Or you could have Sarah notify them legally. There's no rule that says you have to face them if you don't want to. But I knew I'd want to face them. I'd want to see their faces when they realized I wasn't the foolish old woman they'd thought I was. Was that petty? Maybe. But I was entitled to a little pettiness after what they'd done. My phone buzzed. A text from Robert. Hope you're having a nice Sunday, Mom. Chelsea wants to know if we can come by tomorrow afternoon. She found some information about senior communities she wants to show you. They were escalating. Just as Maggie had predicted. I showed Maggie the text. She frowned. They're pushing. They probably want to catch you off guard. Pressure you while you're alone. What do I say? Tell them you're busy. Don't give details. Just say you have plans. I typed back, tomorrow doesn't work for me. I have appointments. Maybe later in the week. Robert's response came quickly, appointments. Are you okay? What kind of appointments? I could hear the concern in his text, but now I couldn't tell if it was genuine or if he was already thinking about how to document this as more evidence of my decline. Just routine things. I typed back. Perfectly fine. Talk later. I put the phone down and looked at Maggie. This feels like lying. It's not lying. It's protecting yourself while you get your affairs in order. You don't owe them a detailed accounting of your schedule, especially not when they've been actively working against you. We finished lunch and went back to my house. Maggie had called a security company she knew, and they were sending someone that afternoon to discuss camera installation. Basic system? Maggie explained. Living room, kitchen, your bedroom, the main entrances. Not to spy on Robert, but to document what happens in your home. If they move things again, if they take things, we'll have proof. The installer arrived at 3. A young man named Marcus who was patient with my questions and explained everything clearly. The cameras would be small, discreet, recording to a cloud service that only I would have access to. Motion activated. Marcus explained. So they only record when someone's moving around. You can check the footage from your phone or computer anytime. And if you want, you can set up alerts so you know when there's activity in your house. How long does installation take? Couple hours. I can do it right now if you'd like. By 6 o'clock, the cameras were installed. Marcus showed me how to access the footage, how to download clips if I needed them, how to adjust settings. It felt strange, having surveillance in my own home, but it also felt necessary. After he left, Maggie and I sat down with the legal documents Sarah had given us to review. Forms to sign, information to gather, accounts to update. It was overwhelming. One step at a time, Maggie said, seeing my expression. You don't have to do everything tonight. We've made huge progress today. Tomorrow you'll sign the documents at Sarah's office. Tuesday or Wednesday you'll see Dr. Morrison, and by the end of next week, everything will be locked down tight. And then you decide how to tell them. And Ellie, you also need to think about what kind of relationship you want with Robert going forward, if any. This isn't just about protecting your assets. It's about protecting your heart, your dignity, your peace of mind. After Maggie left, I spent the evening going through old photo albums. Robert as a baby, chubby and smiling. Robert on his first day of school, gap-toothed and excited. Robert at his wedding to Chelsea, handsome in his tuxedo, looking at his bride with such hope. Where had things gone wrong? Had Chelsea always been this way, and I'd missed the signs? Or had she changed him gradually, year by year, until he became someone who could rationalize stealing from his own mother? I didn't have answers. But I knew that the next few weeks would change everything. Either Robert would realize what he'd done and find his way back to being the son I'd raised, or I'd have to accept that I'd lost him long ago and just hadn't wanted to see it. Either way, I was done being manipulated. Done being gaslit. Done being the convenient target. Eleanor Grace Thompson was taking her life back, one legal document at a time. I went to bed that night exhausted but determined. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, but I'd face them head on. I had to. Because the alternative, letting them win, letting them take everything, was no longer an option. Charles's photo sat on my nightstand the same as it had for 5 years. I touched the frame gently. "I'm doing it," I whispered to his image. "I'm standing up for myself. I hope you'd be proud." Somewhere in my heart, I knew he would be. Charles had never tolerated injustice, had never believed in being a doormat. He'd taught me to be strong, even when it was hard. Now I just had to remember those lessons and put them into practice. As I drifted off to sleep, I heard Chelsea's voice again in my memory. "Once the old lady's gone, we'll finally get the house." But I wasn't gone, I was very much here. And I was about to show them exactly what this old lady was capable of. Monday morning, I was at Sarah's office by 9 o'clock sharp. Maggie met me there, and we spent 3 hours signing documents, initializing pages, watching as Sarah's assistant notarized everything with her official seal. The irrevocable trust for the house. The living trust for my other assets, healthcare directives, a new will that left specific personal items to specific people. But not Robert, not anymore. My mother's jewelry would go to Maggie's daughter Emily. Charles's watch would go to his brother's son, my nephew James, who'd always admired it. The photo albums, the family heirlooms, everything carefully documented and assigned to people who'd actually cherished me, not just what I owned. "How does it feel?" Sarah asked as I signed the final document. "Surreal," I admitted, "like I'm planning my own funeral." "You're not," Sarah said firmly. "You're protecting your legacy and ensuring your wishes are honored. There's a big difference. These documents don't mean you're dying anytime soon, God willing. They mean that when that time eventually comes, it'll be on your terms, not someone else's." As she gathered all the documents into a secure folder. "I'm filing the trust paperwork today. By Wednesday, everything will be officially recorded with the county. I've also scheduled you with Dr. Morrison for tomorrow afternoon at 2. Can you make that? I'll be there." "Good. Bring any medical records you have, especially recent ones. The more documentation we have of your sound health and mind, the better." As Maggie and I walked to the parking lot, my phone buzzed. Another text from Robert. "Mom, we really need to talk about your living situation. Chelsea found a beautiful place with immediate availability. Can we come by tonight?" Immediate availability. They were definitely accelerating their timeline. "They're getting pushy." I showed Maggie the text. "Stall them until everything's filed. Tell them you're not feeling well, you're busy, whatever you need to say. Just keep them at arm's length for a few more days." I texted back, "Not tonight, dear. I'm not feeling my best. Maybe this weekend." This weekend, everything would be locked down. This weekend I could face them from a position of strength. Robert's response came back immediately. "What's wrong? Should I come over? Do you need to see a doctor?" I could almost hear Chelsea in the background, coaching him. "Document everything. Make sure she seems confused, unwell, incompetent." "Just tired," I typed. "Nothing serious. I'll call you tomorrow." I put the phone away and looked at Maggie. "I hate this. I hate not being able to talk to my own son without wondering what his angle is." "I know, honey. But you're almost there. A few more days." That afternoon, I worked on the inventory Sarah had suggested. I went through the house room by room, photographing items, writing descriptions, noting what I wanted to happen to each piece. It was exhausting and emotional, but also clarifying. This house held so many memories. The china cabinet in the dining room that had been Charles's grandmother's. The quilt on my bed that my mother had made. The rocking chair where I'd nursed Robert as a baby. Each item had a story, a connection, a piece of my heart attached to it. I documented everything, creating a detailed spreadsheet with photos and descriptions. When I was done, I had a 60-page document that laid out exactly what should happen to every significant item I owned. I emailed it to Sarah and saved copies to 3 different places. My computer, a flash drive I'd keep in my safe deposit box, and Maggie's email. By evening I was exhausted. But I'd also accomplished something important. If anything happened to me, my wishes were clear. Robert and Chelsea couldn't claim I'd promised them things or argue about what I'd wanted. It was all there in black and white. I ordered takeout for dinner. Something I rarely did, but I was too tired to cook. While I waited for the delivery, I checked the security camera footage on my phone, familiarizing myself with the system. The cameras had captured me moving through the house that day, working on my inventory. It felt strange to see myself on screen, but also reassuring. If Robert and Chelsea came by when I wasn't expecting them, if they tried to take things or move things around, I'd know. Tuesday arrived with rain drumming against the windows. My appointment with Dr. Morrison was at 2, which gave me the morning to gather my medical records. I called Dr. Patterson's office and explained I needed copies of my recent physical exam results. Is everything okay, Mrs. Thompson? The receptionist asked with concern. Everything's fine, I assured her. Just updating some paperwork. The records were ready within an hour. I picked them up, reviewed them while sitting in my car in the parking lot. There it was in black and white. Patient presence is healthy and cognitively intact. Memory sharp, follows complex instructions without difficulty. No signs of dementia or cognitive decline. Overall health excellent for age. Dr. Patterson had even noted, patient is more mentally acute than many people half her age. I held those papers like they were gold. Because to me right now they were. Dr. Morrison's office was in a medical building near the hospital where I'd worked for so many years. The waiting room was quiet, comfortable, with soft lighting and classical music playing. A receptionist greeted me warmly and handed me several forms to fill out. The forms asked detailed questions about my medical history, my daily routines, my mental state. I filled them out carefully and honestly. No, I didn't have trouble remembering recent events. Yes, I managed my own finances. No, I didn't feel confused or disoriented. Yes, I could perform all activities of daily living independently. Dr. Morrison herself came out to greet me after about 15 minutes. She was a petite woman in her 50s with kind eyes and a firm handshake. Mrs. Thompson, please come in. Her office was more like a comfortable living room than a medical space. We sat in armchairs facing each other, with a small table between us holding a box of tissues and a pitcher of water. Sarah Chen explained a bit about your situation, Dr. Morrison began. I understand you're concerned that family members may try to claim you're not competent to make decisions about your own affairs. Was. My son and his wife they've been trying to make me seem like I'm declining, moving my things, making me question my memory. I overheard them planning to get power of attorney and sell my house. Dr. Morrison's expression didn't change, but I saw something flash in her eyes. Anger maybe, or recognition. Unfortunately, I see this more often than you'd think. Let me be clear about what we're doing today. This is a comprehensive cognitive assessment. I'm going to ask you a series of questions, give you some tasks to complete, and evaluate your mental state and decision-making capacity. This isn't a pass-fail test. It's a thorough evaluation that will document your current cognitive functioning. For the next 2 hours, Dr. Morrison put me through a battery of tests. Memory exercises, she gave me a list of words to remember, then asked me to recall them later. Problem-solving tasks, questions about current events, about my life history, about my daily routines. She asked me to explain complex concepts, to work through hypothetical scenarios, to demonstrate my reasoning process. Some of it was easy, some of it was challenging. But I worked through everything carefully, taking my time, not rushing. Finally, Dr. Morrison set down her notes and looked at me directly. Mrs. Thompson, I can tell you right now, before I even write my official report, that you are absolutely, unequivocally cognitively competent. Your memory is excellent, your reasoning is sound, your decision-making capacity is completely intact. If anyone tries to claim otherwise, my evaluation will refute that claim definitively. I felt tears prick my eyes. Thank you. Don't thank me. I'm just documenting the truth. You're a sharp, intelligent woman who's being exploited by people who should be protecting you. What they're doing is called elder abuse, and it's both immoral and illegal. As she paused, then added, I'm going to include something in my report that I don't usually do. I'm going to specifically note that in my professional opinion, any claims of incompetence are likely motivated by financial exploitation rather than genuine concern. It's a strong statement, but given what you've told me and what I've observed today, I feel it's warranted. Won't that seem biased? It's not bias. It's my expert clinical opinion based on the evidence. You've been gaslit, Mrs. Thompson. Someone has been deliberately trying to undermine your confidence in your own mental faculties. That's psychological abuse, and I'm not going to pretend otherwise in my report. I left her office feeling lighter than I had in months. I had proof, professional, documented, official proof, that I was of sound mind. If Robert and Chelsea tried to claim otherwise, they'd have to contend with Dr. Patterson's medical records and Dr. Morrison's comprehensive evaluation. Maggie called as I was driving home. How did it go? She said I'm completely competent. She's going to write a strong report. Of course you are. I could have told them that. I could hear the smile in Maggie's voice. Ellie, you're doing everything right. By the end of this week, you'll be completely protected. When do we tell them? Sarah wants to wait until everything's filed and recorded. Probably Monday of next week. Then you can decide how you want to handle the conversation. Monday. Less than a week away. My stomach churned with anxiety and anticipation. When I got home, there was a car in my driveway. Robert's SUV. My heart sank. I hadn't invited them, hadn't agreed to a visit. But there they were sitting in my driveway waiting. I pulled in slowly, gathering my courage. Through the windshield, I could see both Robert and Chelsea in the front seats. Chelsea was looking at her phone, but Robert was watching my approach. I got out of my car, documents from Dr. Morrison's office tucked safely in my purse. Robert, I said as he climbed out of the SUV. I wasn't expecting you, I know, Mom. I'm sorry to drop by unannounced, but we were worried about you. You've been putting us off all week, and when you said you weren't feeling well. He trailed off, his expression concerned. Chelsea got out too, perfectly dressed as always in a cream-colored dress and heels. Eleanor, we've been so worried. Roberts barely slept. Lies. They were worried, but not about my health. They were worried I was slipping away from their control. I'm fine, I said firmly. Just had some appointments, nothing serious. What kind of appointments? Robert asked. You said you weren't feeling well. Medical appointments, I said vaguely. Routine checkups. I'm 72. Robert, I have doctors to see. Can we come in? Chelsea asked, already moving toward the front door. We brought dinner. Chinese food from that place you like. I wanted to say no, wanted to tell them to leave. But I wasn't ready for the confrontation yet. Everything wasn't filed. I needed a few more days. Of course, I said, unlocking the door. They followed me inside, Chelsea carrying bags of takeout that smelled delicious and made my stomach remind me I hadn't eaten since breakfast. We moved to the kitchen, and I got out plates while Robert unpacked the containers. So, Mom, Robert began as we sat down at the kitchen table, Chelsea and I really think we need to make some decisions about your living situation. I'm happy where I am, I said, serving myself some orange chicken. But this house is so much work, Chelsea pressed. And you're all alone. What if something happened? What if you fell or had a medical emergency? I have a medical alert system, I said. It was true. I'd gotten one after Charles died. And I have friends who check on me regularly. Friends aren't family, Robert said. We're your family, Mom. We want to take care of you. I looked at my son, really looked at him. He seemed sincere. His eyes were concerned, his tone gentle. If I hadn't overheard that conversation, I would have believed him completely. But I had heard it. I knew the truth. I appreciate that, dear, I said carefully. But I'm not ready to leave my home. Not yet. Chelsea and Robert exchanged one of those looks. Eleanor? Chelsea said, her voice taking on a sharper edge. We've been patient, but we really need you to think seriously about this. This house is too much for you. You're forgetting things, getting confused. I'm not confused. I interrupted, keeping my voice steady. My mind is perfectly clear. Mom, you told me last week you couldn't find your medication, Robert said. And you forgot to pay that utility bill. I found my medication exactly where I'd left it, I said, looking him directly in the eye. In the bathroom cabinet. A flicker of something crossed Robert's face. Surprise, worry that I was catching on. The point is, Chelsea said, jumping in smoothly, these little things add up. And we found a wonderful place, really beautiful, with activities and social opportunities. You wouldn't be so isolated. I'm not isolated. Eleanor, when was the last time you left this house except for doctor's appointments? Chelsea challenged. I went to lunch with Maggie on Sunday. I went shopping yesterday. I attend my book club every Wednesday and garden club every other Friday. I'm quite active. Actually, Chelsea's expression tightened. This wasn't going the way she wanted. Mom, Robert tried again. We're not trying to force you into anything. We just want you to be safe and happy. Can we at least schedule a tour, just to look? Maybe, I said. But not this week. I have things to take care of. What things? Chelsea asked, too quickly, too sharply. I looked at her, this woman who'd married my son and systematically worked to isolate me, manipulate me, steal from me. Personal business, I said quietly. Is that acceptable? The room fell silent. Chelsea's jaw tightened. Robert looked uncomfortable. Of course, Robert finally said. We're not trying to run your life, Mom. But that was exactly what they were trying to do. We finished dinner in awkward silence. Chelsea kept checking her phone, clearly frustrated. Robert kept trying to make small talk about his work, about the weather, about anything to fill the silence. Finally they left. We'll call you this weekend, Robert said at the door. Maybe we can get together Sunday. Maybe, I said noncommittally. After they left, I locked the door and leaned against it, my heart pounding. I checked the security camera footage on my phone. The cameras had captured everything. Their arrival, our conversation in the kitchen, the looks they'd exchanged. I downloaded the footage and saved it, just in case. Then I called Maggie. They were here, at my house, waiting for me when I got home from Dr. Morrison's. What did they want? To pressure me about moving, to push harder. Maggie, they're getting desperate. I could feel it, which means we need to move faster. Let me call Sarah. Maybe we can expedite the filing. The sooner everything's locked down, the better. After we hung up, I sat in my living room in Charles's chair and let myself shake. The confrontation was coming sooner than I'd thought. They were pushing too hard too fast. But I was ready. Or at least, I would be. By Monday, everything would be in place. And then Robert and Chelsea would discover that the confused old lady they'd been manipulating was much stronger and smarter than they'd ever imagined. I just had to hold on a few more days. Wednesday morning brought news from Sarah. Everything's filed and recorded, she said over the phone. The house is officially in the irrevocable trust. Your other assets are protected in the living trust. All the paperwork is done, Eleanor. You're legally protected. I sat down heavily in a kitchen chair, relief washing over me. So they can't take anything. Not a single thing. The house will never be part of your estate. Your savings and investments are protected. Even if they somehow convinced a court you were incompetent, which they can't, given Dr. Morrison's evaluation, they still couldn't access these assets. You've locked everything down tight. What happens now? No, you decide how you want to inform them. We can send a formal letter from my office. You can tell them yourself. You can have a family meeting with me present. It's entirely your choice. I thought about it. Robert and Chelsea were expecting me to fold, to be the compliant mother who eventually gave in to their pressure. They thought they were slowly breaking me down, making me doubt myself until I'd sign whatever they put in front of me. They deserved to hear the truth from my own lips. A family meeting, I said. This Sunday. At my house? Can you be there? Absolutely. I'll bring copies of all the documentation. What time? 2 o'clock. That gives them time to get to church first if they want. It was petty, but if they were going to sit in church Sunday morning and then come to my house to try to manipulate me, they should at least have to face that hypocrisy. I'll be there at 1:30 so we can prepare. Sarah said, Eleanor, I want you to know, you've done everything right. You've protected yourself with dignity and wisdom. Whatever happens on Sunday, remember that. After we hung up, I called Robert. My hands were shaking as I dialed, but my voice was steady when he answered. Mom, hi. How are you feeling? I'm well, Robert. I'd like you and Chelsea to come to the house on Sunday at 2 o'clock. There's something we need to discuss. A pause. What is it? Is everything okay? Everything's fine. I just have some things I need to tell you both. Can you make it? Of course. Should I be worried? I'll see you Sunday, I said and hung up before he could press for more details. Then I called Maggie. It's done. Everything's filed. And I've set up a meeting with Robert and Chelsea for Sunday. Are you sure you're ready? No. But I'm doing it anyway. Maggie was quiet for a moment. Do you want me there? Sarah's going to be there as my attorney. But I'd like you to come earlier. Help me prepare. Help me stay strong. I'll be there Saturday evening. We'll get you ready. The next few days passed in a strange limbo. I went about my normal routine, garden club on Friday, grocery shopping on Saturday morning. But underneath it all, my mind was constantly rehearsing what I'd say, how I'd handle their reactions, what would happen after the truth came out. Robert called twice during the week, ostensibly to check on me, but I could hear the curiosity in his voice. What was Sunday's meeting about? Was I finally ready to discuss my options? I kept my responses vague, pleasant, noncommittal. Chelsea texted me a link to a senior living community website. Just take a look, her message said. I think you'd love it there. I didn't respond. Saturday evening, Maggie arrived with Chinese takeout. Good Chinese food, not the mediocre stuff Robert and Chelsea had brought. We ate at the kitchen table, and she helped me organize my thoughts. What do you want to accomplish tomorrow? She asked. I want them to know I'm not the fool they think I am. I want them to understand there are consequences for what they've done. And I paused, trying to articulate the deeper need. I want Robert to see what he's become, what she's turned him into. He might not see it, Maggie warned gently. He might double down. He might get angry, blame you, refuse to accept responsibility. You need to be prepared for that. I know. And Chelsea will almost certainly get nasty. From everything you've told me, she's someone who doesn't like losing. She's been planning to get this house for who knows how long. When she realizes it's gone, truly gone, she's gonna lash out. Let her, Maggie smiled. That's my girl. We spent the evening going over the documents, rehearsing potential scenarios. What if Robert accused me of being manipulated by Maggie or Sarah? What if Chelsea claimed I wasn't mentally competent to make these decisions? What if they stormed out? What if they threatened legal action? For each scenario, we prepared a response. We gathered documentation, Dr. Morrison's evaluation, my medical records, bank statements showing I'd been managing my finances competently, even a letter from my book club president attesting to my active social life and sharp mind. Overkill? I asked, looking at the pile of papers. No such thing when you're dealing with people who've already shown they'll lie and manipulate, Maggie said firmly. That night, I barely slept. I kept rehearsing what I'd say, imagining Robert's face when he realized what I'd done. Would there be shame? Anger? Regret? Or would he simply see me as the obstacle I'd always been to him? Something to be managed and overcome. Sunday morning, I dressed carefully in a burgundy dress Charles had always loved, paired with my mother's pearl necklace. Armor for the battle ahead. I went to the early service at my church, the same church Robert and Chelsea occasionally attended when they wanted to be seen. I prayed. For strength. For wisdom, for the right words. And, though I wasn't sure, I truly believed it would help, for Robert's heart to open, to see what he'd done, to come back to being the son I'd raised. Maggie arrived at noon with sandwiches neither of us could eat. We picked at the food and reviewed everything one more time. Sarah arrived at 1:30, professional in a navy suit, carrying a briefcase full of documents. "How are you holding up?" she asked. Terrified, I admitted. "That's normal. But Eleanor, remember, you have all the power here. You've done nothing wrong. You've simply protected yourself from people who were actively trying to exploit you. That's not just your right, it's smart and necessary." We arranged the living room carefully. I'd sit in Charles's chair. It gave me strength to be in his spot. Sarah would sit to my right in the wingback chair, her briefcase at her feet. Maggie would sit to my left on the sofa. Robert and Chelsea would have the love seat facing all of us. The stage was set. At exactly 2 o'clock, Robert's SUV pulled into the driveway. I watched from the window as he and Chelsea got out, both dressed in their church clothes. Robert looked concerned. Chelsea looked annoyed, checking her phone as they walked to the door. I opened it before they could knock. "Mom," Robert said, leaning in to kiss my cheek. "You look nice, thank you, dear. Come in." They stepped inside and stopped short when they saw Sarah and Maggie already seated in the living room. "What's this?" Chelsea asked, her eyes narrowing. "You didn't say this was a group meeting. Please sit down," I said, gesturing to the love seat. "We have some things to discuss." Robert and Chelsea exchanged a look. Worried now, uncertain, they sat down slowly. Chelsea's posture rigid, Robert's eyes darting between me and the others. "Robert, Chelsea, this is Sarah Chen. She's an attorney who specializes in elder law. She's been helping me with some legal matters this past week." "Legal matters?" Robert's voice rose slightly. "Mom, what's going on? If you needed legal help, why didn't you call me? I could have recommended someone." "Because what I needed help with involved you," I said quietly. Silence fell over the room. Chelsea's face was unreadable, but I saw her hands clench in her lap. "I don't understand," Robert said, but his voice suggested he was beginning to. I took a deep breath. "Last Saturday, when you and Chelsea visited, I overheard a phone conversation." Chelsea went pale. Robert looked confused. "I'd gone to the garage to get napkins," I continued, my voice steady despite my racing heart. The window was open. Chelsea was outside, on her phone, talking to someone named Linda.
"Mom, I don't."
Robert started. "She told Linda that you'd been documenting my supposed decline, that you'd been moving my medications, making bills disappear, making me think I was losing my memory. She said once you got power of attorney, you could finally sell my house and get the money you've been planning to get. She said, and I quote, 'Once the old lady's gone, we'll finally get the house.'" The color drained from Robert's face. Chelsea's expression hardened. "That's ridiculous," Chelsea said sharply. "You misheard, or you misunderstood, or, I have it on recording," I lied smoothly. "The whole conversation. Would you like to hear it?" I didn't actually have a recording, but they didn't know that. Chelsea's mouth snapped shut. Robert was staring at Chelsea, his expression shifting from confusion to dawning horror. "Chelsea, what is she talking about?" "She's confused, Robert. She's making things up, or someone's been filling her head with." "I'm not confused," I said firmly. "I had a complete cognitive evaluation done by Dr. Patricia Morrison 3 days ago. She's a geriatric psychiatrist who specializes in competency assessments. Would you like to see her report?" Sarah pulled out the thick document and set it on the coffee table. "It's very thorough. Dr. Morrison found Mrs. Thompson to be completely cognitively intact, with memory and reasoning skills that are, quote, 'There is no decline. There never was. Then why?'" Robert started, then stopped, looking at Chelsea with growing understanding. "The medications I couldn't find," I continued. "I found them in places I never put them. The bills that went missing, they reappeared after you'd visited. The signs of confusion you've been documenting weren't my decline, Robert. They were your manipulation." "That's insane," Chelsea said, standing up. "We've been worried about you, trying to help you, and this is how you repay us, by making accusations and—" "Sit down, Mrs. Thompson," Sarah said coldly. "We're not finished." Something in Sarah's tone made Chelsea sink back down, though her expression was furious. "Or Mrs. Thompson. Eleanor has taken steps to protect herself from financial exploitation," Sarah continued. "As of Wednesday, her house has been placed in an irrevocable trust. Upon her death, it will go directly to the Alzheimer's Foundation that her late husband supported. It is no longer part of her estate and cannot be sold or accessed by anyone else." Robert's face went white. Mom, what? Why would you? Her other assets have been similarly protected in a living trust, Sarah continued. Healthcare directives have been established that specifically exclude both of you from any decision-making capacity. In short, there is nothing you can manipulate, nothing you can take, nothing you can benefit from. This is Maggie's doing. Chelsea spat, pointing at my friend. She's been poisoning you against us, making you paranoid. Maggie saved me, I said quietly. She helped me see what was really happening. She helped me protect myself. Robert hadn't moved. He was staring at his hands, his face a mask of conflicting emotions. Robert, I said gently. Look at me. He raised his eyes slowly and I saw tears in them. When did I become a burden to you? I asked. When did I stop being your mother and become just an obstacle to the life you wanted? Mom, his voice broke. I didn't mean. Chelsea said you'd be happier in a facility, that the house was too much for you, that we were helping. You were gaslighting me. I said, the pain sharp in my chest. You were making me doubt my own mind. Do you have any idea what that feels like? To think you're losing yourself, to fear dementia, to wonder if you can trust your own thoughts. A tear rolled down Robert's cheek. I'm sorry. Are you? I asked. Are you sorry for what you did, or are you sorry you got caught? He didn't answer. Chelsea stood up again, her face twisted with fury. You stupid old woman, do you have any idea what you've just done? That house is worth $1 million. $1 million that should have been Robert's. Should have been. I interrupted. Nothing was owed to you, Chelsea. Nothing. This is my house. Mine and Charles's. We built it, we paid for it, we filled it with love and memories. It was never yours to count on. We've spent years taking care of you, Chelsea hissed. Years of visits and phone calls, and pretending to care about your boring stories and your pathetic life. We earned that house. You've spent years manipulating me, I corrected. There's a difference. Robert put his head in his hands. Oh God, Chelsea, what have we done? What we had to do. Chelsea snapped at him. Don't you dare fall apart now. She's the one being unreasonable. Get out, I said quietly. Chelsea's eyes widened. What? Get out, both of you. Get out of my house. Mom, Robert looked up, his face streaked with tears. Please, I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. Can we talk about this? Can we? There's nothing to talk about, I said, my voice shaking now. You tried to steal from me. You tried to make me think I was losing my mind. You documented my supposed decline like I was a case study instead of your mother. And for what? Money? A bigger house. I thought you'd be happier, Robert said weakly. You thought what was convenient for you, I said. You didn't think about what I wanted. You didn't ask what would make me happy. You just decided with her. I gestured to Chelsea. To take what you wanted regardless of what it cost me. Sarah stood up. I think we're done here. Mrs. Thompson has made her wishes clear. You need to leave. Chelsea grabbed her purse, her face contorted with rage. You'll regret this. We'll fight you on this. You'll do nothing? Sarah said firmly. Every action Mrs. Thompson has taken is completely legal and ironclad. If you attempt to contest any of these arrangements, you'll lose, and it will cost you thousands in legal fees. I strongly advise you to accept reality and move on. Robert, let's go, Chelsea commanded, already heading for the door. But Robert didn't move. He was looking at me, really looking at me, maybe for the first time in years. Mom, I'm so sorry. I don't know how I let things get this far. I don't know how I became someone who could do this to you. Neither do I said softly. Can we? Is there any way to fix this? I thought about that. Could he fix this? Could we rebuild what he'd broken? I honestly didn't know. Maybe, I said finally. But not today. And not while you're still with someone who sees me as an obstacle instead of a person. Robert glanced at Chelsea, who was standing by the door, vibrating with fury. Then he looked back at me and I saw something in his face. A choice being made. Chelsea, wait in the car, he said quietly. Robert, win. The car. The Chelsea's mouth closed, then opened again. She looked like she wanted to argue, but something in Robert's tone stopped her. She stormed out, slamming the door behind her. Robert turned back to me. I don't even know if I can forgive myself. But I want you to know. I see it now. I see what I did, what I let her talk me into. And I'm horrified. Then why did you do it? I asked, tears finally spilling down my cheeks. Why, Robert? Because it was easier than standing up to her, he said simply. Because she made it sound reasonable, like we were helping you. Because I wanted the money and I let myself believe we deserved it. Because I'm weak and selfish and I became someone I don't recognize. He stood up, walked closer. I don't know if I can fix this. I don't know if I can fix myself. But I'm going to try. And whether you forgive me or not, whether you ever want to see me again or not, I want you to know I'm sorry. I'm truly, deeply sorry. Then he left, the door closing softly behind him. I stood there shaking, tears streaming down my face. Maggie came to me immediately, wrapping her arms around me while Sarah quietly began gathering her documents. You did it, Maggie whispered. You stood up for yourself. You were magnificent. But I didn't feel magnificent, I felt shattered. Because I'd won the battle, I'd protected my assets, I'd stood my ground, I'd confronted the people who'd been exploiting me. But I'd lost my son. Maybe not forever, but for now. And that hurt more than anything else possibly could. Sarah touched my shoulder gently before she left. I'll send you copies of everything. Call me if they try to contact you or cause any problems. You did the right thing today, Eleanor. Never doubt that. After she left, Maggie and I sat on the sofa, and I let myself cry. For the relationship I'd lost. For the son I thought I'd raised. For the grandmother I'd never get to be, because Robert and Chelsea had no children and now probably never would be in my life. Do you think he meant it? I finally asked. What he said about being sorry. I think he's starting to see what he's done. Maggie said carefully. Whether he follows through, whether he changes, whether he leaves Chelsea and becomes the person you raised, I don't know. But at least there's a chance now. Before today he was just digging himself deeper. Now he's seen the bottom, I nodded, wiping my eyes. What happens now? Now you heal. Now you live your life on your terms. Now you remember that you're Eleanor Grace Thompson, and you're strong enough to survive anything. Even this. I leaned against my friend, exhausted and heartbroken, but also strangely free. Free from the manipulation. Free from the gaslighting. Free from constantly wondering if I was losing my mind. The house was quiet around us, full of memories both beautiful and painful. But it was my house. Legally, securely, irrevocably mine for as long as I lived. And when I died, it would help people with Alzheimer's, would honor Charles's memory, would do some good in the world. Chelsea and Robert had tried to take everything. Instead, they'd lost it all. I didn't know if I'd ever speak to my son again. I didn't know if he'd find his way back to being someone I could trust. I didn't know what the future held. But I knew one thing: I'd stood up for myself. I'd been strong when it mattered most. And somehow that would have to be enough. The first week after the confrontation was the hardest. I jumped every time the phone rang, my heart racing, wondering if it was Robert calling to apologize or Chelsea calling to threaten. But the phone stayed mostly silent. Tuesday morning, a large manila envelope arrived via courier. Inside was a handwritten letter on Robert's business stationery. Mom, I've been trying to write this letter for 3 days. I keep starting and stopping because nothing I say feels adequate. You were right about everything. Chelsea and I did manipulate you. We did move your things. We did gaslight you into thinking you were declining. And we did it deliberately, methodically, over months. I told myself we were helping you. That you'd be happier in a facility. That we were saving you from the burden of maintaining the house. But those were lies I told myself so I could sleep at night. The truth is, we wanted your money. I wanted your money. Chelsea wanted the house, the lifestyle upgrade, the financial security. And I let her convince me that we deserved it, that we'd earned it somehow by tolerating your presence in our lives. Writing that makes me sick. You're my mother. You raised me alone after Dad died. You worked yourself to exhaustion to give me opportunities. You loved me unconditionally. And I repaid you by treating you like an inconvenient obstacle. I've moved out. Chelsea and I are separating. I know that doesn't fix what I did to you, but I can't be with someone who brought out the worst in me, who made cruelty seem reasonable. I need to figure out who I am without her influence, and whether I can become someone worthy of being your son again. I don't expect forgiveness. I don't expect a relationship. I just wanted you to know that I see what I did. I understand how profoundly I hurt you, and I'm ashamed beyond words. I hope you're well. I hope you're happy. I hope someday maybe, you'll be able to think of me without feeling betrayed. I love you. I know I have a terrible way of showing it, but I do. Robert, I read the letter 3 times, tears blurring the words. Then I called Maggie. He left Chelsea, I told her. He sent me a letter. He says he's ashamed, that he sees what he did. How do you feel? Broken, relieved, angry, sad, everything all at once? That's normal. Ellie, this doesn't mean you have to forgive him or let him back into your life. He hurt you deeply. You get to decide if and when you're ready to have any kind of relationship with him. I know. But Maggie, what if this is real? What if he's genuinely remorseful and trying to change? Do I just abandon him? You're not abandoning him. You're protecting yourself. There's a difference. If Robert truly wants to change, to earn back your trust, that's going to take time. Months, maybe years. You don't owe him instant forgiveness just because he wrote a nice letter. She was right. I knew she was right. But my mother's heart ached for the little boy who'd brought me dandelions, for the teenager who'd cried at his father's funeral, for some version of my son who might still exist under all the mistakes. I didn't respond to the letter. Not yet, I wasn't ready. 2 days later, Chelsea called. I almost didn't answer, but curiosity got the better of me, Eleanor. Her voice was ice. I hope you're satisfied. You've destroyed my marriage. I didn't destroy your marriage, Chelsea. You did that yourself when you decided manipulating my mother-in-law was an acceptable way to make money. Robert would have been fine if you hadn't turned him against me. We had a plan. We were building a future. You were committing elder abuse, I interrupted. That's not building a future. That's committing a crime. You self-righteous bitch, Chelsea hissed, her composure finally cracking completely. You're sitting in $1 million house you don't even need, being selfish while people who actually have their lives ahead of them have to struggle. Goodbye, Chelsea, I said, and hung up. She called back immediately. I blocked her number. For several minutes I sat there, my hands shaking. Then I started to laugh. Not from humor, but from the sheer absurdity of it. Chelsea genuinely believed she was the victim here. She truly thought she was entitled to my house, my money, my life's work, simply because she wanted it and I was old. The entitlement was breathtaking. My phone rang again. Unknown number. I didn't answer. A voicemail appeared. Mrs. Thompson, this is Linda Garrison. I'm Chelsea's friend. I think you should know that Chelsea is very upset, and she's talking about filing a lawsuit claiming you're not competent to have made those legal changes. I thought you should be warned. She's also been posting about you on social media, making you sound like a terrible person. I thought you should know. I saved the voicemail and forwarded it to Sarah. She called back within an hour. Eleanor, this is good news. Actually, how is any of that good news? Because if Chelsea files a frivolous lawsuit, she'll lose and potentially face sanctions. And if she's posting defamatory things about you on social media, we can pursue action against her. She's digging her own grave. I don't want to pursue action. I just want to be left alone. Then be left alone. But document everything. Save every voicemail, every text, every social media post anyone sends you. Just in case. The weeks began to blur together. I threw myself into my normal routines with an almost desperate energy. Garden club, lunch with Maggie twice a week. I volunteered at the library where I used to work, reading to children during story hour. I was filling my days, staying busy, not thinking about Robert or Chelsea or the gaping hole where my family used to be. But at night, alone in the house, I couldn't escape the thoughts. I'd lie in bed, staring at the ceiling, wondering if I'd done the right thing. Wondering if I'd been too harsh, too absolute. Wondering if I should have given Robert another chance immediately instead of making him wait. You're second-guessing yourself. Maggie said over lunch one afternoon about 6 weeks after the confrontation. Stop it. How can I not? He's my son, Maggie. My only child. Who tried to steal from you? Who gaslit you? Who documented your supposed decline like you were a research subject? Ellie, stop romanticizing him. He hurt you. Deliberately. Repeatedly. The fact that he's sorry now doesn't erase what he did. But people can change. Maybe. But change takes time. It takes consistent action, not just words. If Robert wants back in your life, he needs to earn it. He needs to demonstrate over months or years that he's different, that he's trustworthy. You don't owe him immediate forgiveness just because you're lonely. The word hit like a physical blow. Lonely. That's what I was. Desperately, etchingly lonely. I know you miss him, Maggie said gently. I know this hurts. But Ellie, you can't set yourself on fire to keep him warm. You have to protect yourself first. I nodded, blinking back tears. When does it stop hurting? I don't know. But it will get easier. I promise. In truth, it was getting easier. The first week, I'd cried every day. Now it was only a few times a week. The sharp edge of betrayal was dulling into a more manageable ache. I started redecorating. Nothing major, just small changes. New curtains in the living room. A fresh coat of paint in the kitchen. Rearranging furniture to create new patterns. New ways of moving through the space. Charles's chair stayed where it was, though. Some things were too precious to change. I also started going through old photo albums, deciding what to do with them. So many pictures of Robert at different ages, smiling and happy. I couldn't throw them away, but I couldn't look at them without pain either. Finally, I packed them carefully into a box and stored them in the guest room closet. Not forgotten, but not constantly visible. Maybe someday I'd be able to look at them without this crushing sense of loss. 3 months after the confrontation, I received another letter from Robert. This one was shorter. Mom, I'm not writing to ask for anything. I just wanted you to know what I've been doing. I've been seeing a therapist twice a week. Harrison specializes in family relationships and helping people understand how they rationalize harmful behavior. It's been brutal and enlightening. I've started volunteering at a senior center, helping elderly people with their finances and paperwork. It's shown me how vulnerable that population is, how many people try to take advantage of them. It's shown me what I did to you from a different perspective. I'm not drinking anymore. I didn't realize how much I was using alcohol to numb my conscience until I stopped. Chelsea and I are divorced as of last week. She's already moved on, dating someone else. I'm relieved. I don't expect you to respond to this. I just wanted you to know I'm trying to become someone better. Someone you might someday not be ashamed to call your son. Love, Robert. I held the letter for a long time. Then I wrote back, just 2 sentences. Robert, I'm proud of the work you're doing. Keep going. Mom, I didn't tell him I forgave him. I didn't invite him over. But I acknowledged his effort. It felt like the right balance. Maggie raised her eyebrows when I told her. Are you sure you're ready for contact? It's just a letter. I'm not inviting him back into my life. I'm just acknowledging that he's trying. As long as you're doing it for the right reasons and not because you're lonely. Maybe it's both. I admitted. Maybe that's okay. The holidays approached with a strange mixture of dread and relief. No Robert and Chelsea to pretend everything was fine with. No awkward dinners where I had to wonder if they were scheming. Just me, Maggie, and Maggie's family for Thanksgiving. It was lovely and sad all at once. Christmas was harder. I'd always decorated elaborately for Robert when he was young. This year, I put up a small tree with just a handful of ornaments. It felt appropriate, scaled down, manageable, honest about the reality of my life now. Robert sent a card. No letter this time, just a card with a simple message. Thinking of you. Miss you? I put it on the mantel next to the photos I hadn't packed away. Charles's photo. My parents' photo. And yes, one photo of Robert as a child before everything got complicated. On New Year's Eve, I sat in Charles's chair with a glass of wine and reflected on the year. It had been the hardest year since Charles died. Maybe harder, because this was a different kind of loss. Not death, but betrayal and choice. But I'd survived, more than survived. I'd stood up for myself. I'd protected what was mine. I'd refused to be a victim. I did it, Charles. I whispered to his photo. I was strong like you always said I could be. The house settled around me, creaking slightly in the winter wind. My house, my sanctuary, my home that no one could take from me. It wasn't the life I'd imagined at 72. I'd thought I'd be a grandmother by now, surrounded by family at holidays, the beloved matriarch of a growing clan. Instead, I was alone. But I was free. Free from manipulation, from gaslighting, from the constant low-level anxiety of wondering if I was losing my mind. There was power in that freedom, peace in it even. My phone buzzed with a text from Maggie. Happy New Year, my dear friend, proud of you. Love you. I smiled and texted back, love you too. Thank you for everything. As midnight approached, I raised my wine glass to the empty room. Here's to surviving, I said aloud, and to whatever comes next. The clock struck 12, and outside I could hear distant fireworks and cheering. A new year. A fresh start. I didn't know what it would bring. I didn't know if Robert would continue his work or if he'd eventually drift away entirely. I didn't know if I'd ever truly forgive him or if our relationship would ever be more than occasional letters and careful distance. But I knew I'd be okay. Because I'd learned something crucial this year. I was stronger than I'd ever imagined. Strong enough to stand alone. Strong enough to protect myself. Strong enough to survive anything. Even the loss of my son. Even the betrayal of family. Even the shattering of everything I thought my life would be. I was Eleanor Grace Thompson. I'd built a life once with Charles, filled with love and purpose. I could build one again, on my own terms, for myself. And maybe, just maybe, that was enough. Spring arrived 6 months after the confrontation, bringing with it warmth and new life. My garden, which I'd been tending with renewed vigor, exploded in color, tulips and daffodils, azaleas and cherry blossoms. I spent hours out there, hands in the soil, feeling connected to something larger than my own pain. Life had settled into a new rhythm. My routines had expanded beyond just staying busy to actually finding joy again. I joined a watercolor painting class at the community center. Started a monthly dinner club with 5 other women from my book group. Even adopted a cat, a gray tabby named Winston who'd been surrendered to the shelter when his elderly owner passed away. Look at you, Maggie said one afternoon, finding me in the garden with Winston lounging nearby in a patch of sunlight. You're blooming. I'm trying, I said, sitting back on my heels. Some days are better than others. That's life, honey. The good news is the good days are starting to outnumber the bad ones. She was right. I still had moments of profound sadness, times when I'd see a father and son together and feel the loss like a physical ache. But those moments were becoming less frequent, less all-consuming. Robert continued to write once a month. Brief updates on his therapy, his volunteer work, his life. I responded occasionally, keeping my messages short but not cold. We were circling each other carefully, 2 people trying to find a new way to exist in each other's orbits. In April, he asked if he could visit. Mom, I know I have no right to ask this. But I'd like to see you, not to ask for anything. Not to push for forgiveness I haven't earned. Just to see you, to sit in the same room with you, to have a conversation that's not through letters. If you're not ready, I understand, I'll wait as long as you need. But if you're willing, I'd like to try. Love, Robert, I called Maggie immediately. What do I do? What do you want to do? I thought about it. Really thought about it. Was I ready to see him? To look at the face of the man who'd betrayed me and see if there was anything left of the boy I'd raised. I think I want to see him, I said slowly. But I'm terrified. Want me to be here? Would you? Of course. I wrote back to Robert that afternoon. You can come for coffee. Saturday at 2 p.m. Maggie will be here. His response was immediate. Thank you, I'll be there. Saturday arrived with perfect spring weather, sunny and warm with a gentle breeze. I changed my outfit 3 times, finally settling on comfortable slacks and a lavender blouse. Maggie arrived at 1:30, carrying pastries from the bakery Robert had loved as a child. Insurance, she said with a small smile. Something familiar and positive. At exactly 2 o'clock, a car pulled into the driveway. Not the expensive SUV Robert and Chelsea had driven, but a modest sedan. Robert got out slowly and I watched from the window as he stood for a moment, staring at the house with an expression I couldn't quite read. He'd lost weight. His face looked thinner, older, more lined. He was dressed casually in jeans and a button-down shirt, and he carried a small paper bag. I opened the door before he could knock, the same way I had the day of the confrontation. But this time the atmosphere was entirely different. Hi, Mom, he said softly. Hello, Robert. Come in. He stepped inside, and I saw him take in the changes. The new curtains, the rearranged furniture, the fresh paint. His eyes lingered on the mantel, where his childhood photo still sat alongside Charles's. The house looks good, he said. Different, but good. I've been making some updates. We moved to the living room. Robert hesitated when he saw Maggie, then nodded to her. Mrs. Foster. Thank you for being here. And thank you for helping my mom when she needed it. Maggie's expression was guarded but not hostile. You're welcome. We all sat down, me in Charles's chair, Maggie on the sofa, Robert in the wingback chair where Sarah had sat during the confrontation. He noticed, and I saw him flinch slightly. I brought something, Robert said, holding up the paper bag. Your favorite tea. The fancy kind from that shop downtown. I don't expect you to accept it, but I wanted to bring something. I took the bag and looked inside. English breakfast, loose leaf, from the specialty shop Charles used to take me to for special occasions. It must have cost $40. Thank you, I said, setting it on the coffee table. Silence fell. Robert looked like he was gathering courage, trying to find words. I don't know where to start, he finally said. Start with the truth, I suggested. How did it get to that point? When did you become someone who could do what you did to me? He took a shaky breath. I've been trying to figure that out in therapy. Dr. Harrison thinks it was gradual. Little compromises that seemed harmless at first, then bigger ones, until I'd rationalized something completely unconscionable. When did it start? Honestly, I think it started when Chelsea and I first started having financial problems. About 3 years ago. Her real estate sales were down, my practice was struggling with some bad investments. We were stressed about money constantly. He paused, looking at his hands. Chelsea mentioned, just casually one day, that you were sitting on so much equity in this house. That it seemed wasteful for you to be rattling around here alone when we were struggling. At first, I shut it down, but she kept bringing it up, and eventually, I started listening. So you blame her? No, Robert said firmly. I could have said no at any point. I could have put my foot down, defended you, refused to participate. I didn't. That's on me. Chelsea may have planted the seeds, but I watered them. I let them grow. I made the choice every single time to go along with the manipulation. Why? It was the question that had haunted me for months. Why, Robert? Was the money really that important? I told myself it was about security. About giving us a better life. Maybe starting a family, not struggling anymore. But Dr. Harrison helped me see the real truth. He looked up, meeting my eyes. It was easier to see you as an obstacle than as my mother. If I thought of you as my mom, who loved me and sacrificed for me, I couldn't justify what we were doing, so I started seeing you as just an old woman taking up space. Taking up resources, in my way. The honesty was brutal, but I appreciated it more than excuses would have been. It's the same psychological process people use to justify all kinds of terrible things. Robert continued. Dehumanize the victim so you don't have to feel guilty. I'm ashamed to say it worked. When you became the old lady instead of mom in my mind, I could move your pills and tell myself I was just testing your memory. I could hide your bills and tell myself I was documenting your decline. I could plan to take your house and tell myself I was helping you move somewhere better. When did you realize what you were doing? Honestly, not until you confronted me, until Sarah laid out everything you'd done to protect yourself, and I saw it all clearly for the first time. How calculated we'd been, how cruel. I went home that day and threw up. Literally, because I realized what I'd become. Tears were running down his face now, but he made no move to wipe them away. I've tried to understand how I could do that to you, he said. The woman who raised me alone after Dad died. Who worked double shifts so I could go to college. Who supported me through every failure and celebrated every success. And the only answer I can come up with is that I'm weak. I let my financial stress and my marriage problems turn me into someone I never thought I could be. Someone cruel and selfish and willing to hurt the person who loved me most. I sat with that for a moment. Winston, who'd been sleeping on the sofa next to Maggie, stood up, stretched, and padded over to me. I picked him up, grateful for the comfort of his warm, purring body. What changed? I asked. You sent me those letters about therapy, about volunteering, about trying to be better. Why, if you were so far gone, what brought you back? Losing you, Robert said simply. When you told me to leave that day, when I realized I'd destroyed the most important relationship in my life for money I didn't even get, it broke something open in me. I couldn't live with what I'd done. I had two choices. Keep making excuses and rationalizations and live as that person forever, or do the brutal work of figuring out how I'd gotten there and trying to become someone different. And Chelsea. I moved out that same week. I couldn't stay with someone who brought out the worst in me, who encouraged my worst impulses. The divorce was final 3 months ago. I'm honestly relieved. I feel like I can breathe again, like I can think clearly without someone constantly whispering in my ear that we deserve more, that you're in the way, that the ends justify the means. Maggie spoke up for the first time. What do you want from Eleanor now? Robert looked at her, then at me. Nothing. I mean, I want a relationship with my mom, but I know that's not something I can demand or expect. I'm here because she was willing to see me. If this is all I ever get, one conversation where I can apologize face to face and tell her I'm trying to be better, that's more than I deserve. Do you understand that trust isn't rebuilt overnight? I asked. That even if I wanted to have you back in my life, it would take time. Years maybe. I understand. I'm not asking for instant forgiveness or for things to go back to the way they were. I'm just asking for a chance to show you over time that I can be different. That I am different. I looked at my son. Really looked at him. He seemed smaller somehow, humbled. The cocky confidence that Chelsea had encouraged in him was gone, replaced by something more genuine and uncertain. Tell me about the volunteer work, I said. His face brightened slightly. I've been volunteering at Riverside Senior Center 3 days a week. I help seniors with financial paperwork, understanding their bills, organizing their accounts. A lot of them are being exploited by family members or predatory companies. I help them protect themselves. Like I had to protect myself from you, I said quietly. He flinched. Yes, exactly like that. And every time I help someone, I think about what I did to you. It's penance, I guess. But it's also shown me how common this is, how many people prey on the elderly. It's made me see myself clearly. I was one of those predators. I was doing to you what I now help others defend against. That's good, I said. The work, I mean, that's a good thing to do. It doesn't make up for what I did, no. But it's something positive. That matters. We talked for another hour. Robert told me about his therapy, about the exercises Dr. Harrison had him doing to understand his choices and their consequences, about the amends he was trying to make, not just to me but to himself, to become someone he could respect. I told him about my life, the painting class, the dinner club, Winston, the garden I'd been working on, the volunteer reading I was doing at the library. I told him about my life not to prove anything, but to show him that I was thriving without him, that I'd built a life that was full and meaningful, even without my son in it. I'm proud of you, Mom, he said as he was preparing to leave. You stood up for yourself when it mattered most. You didn't let us destroy you. That took incredible strength. I learned from the best, I said, thinking of Charles. Your father taught me to never accept injustice, even from people you love. I wish he was here. He'd be so disappointed in me. Yes, I agreed. He would be. But he'd also want you to do better. To be better. He believed in second chances, as long as people earned them. Robert nodded, his eyes wet. Can I write to you still? Yes. Can I visit again? Maybe in a month or two. I hesitated, then nodded. We'll see. Let's take it slow. Okay. Slow is good. Slow is more than I hoped for. At the door, Robert paused. Mom, I need you to know something. Even if you never forgive me, even if we never have a real relationship again, I'm grateful for today. Grateful that you gave me a chance to apologize, to explain, to see you. Thank you. You're welcome, I said simply. After he left, Maggie and I sat in silence for a while, Winston purring between us. How do you feel? She finally asked. Confused, sad, but also hopeful. It's not crazy. He seems genuinely remorseful. Whether that translates into lasting change remains to be seen, but at least he's trying. Do you think I'm being foolish, letting him back in? Even a little. Maggie considered this. I think you're being cautious but open. You're not giving him free access to your life. You're not pretending nothing happened. You're just allowing the possibility that people can change, that relationships can heal. There's wisdom in that. Over the following months, Robert visited once a month. Always scheduled in advance. Always with Maggie present at first, then eventually just the two of us. We talked about his therapy, his work, his life. I told him about mine. We were rebuilding slowly, carefully on a foundation of honesty instead of the unexamined assumptions and expectations that had existed before. It wasn't the relationship we'd had. That relationship was dead, killed by his betrayal and my necessary self-protection. But this new relationship, fragile as it was, had something the old one had lacked: truth. One afternoon in late summer, nearly a year after the confrontation, Robert and I were sitting in the garden. Winston was chasing a butterfly while we drank lemonade in the shade. "Do you think you'll ever fully forgive me?" Robert asked. I thought about it. "I don't know. I'm not sure forgiveness works that way. All at once, complete and total. I think it's more like I'm learning to hold both things at the same time. The hurt you caused and the effort you're making. The betrayal and the remorse. The past and the present. That seems hard." "It is. But life is complicated. People are complicated. You're my son, I love you. And you hurt me terribly. Both of those things are true, and I'm learning to live with that." "I'm proud of you," Robert said. "For standing up for yourself, for building this life, for not letting what I did define you." "I'm proud of you too," I said. "For doing the hard work, for facing what you did, for trying to be better." He looked surprised, then his eyes filled with tears. "Thank you. That means more than you know." We sat in comfortable silence, watching Winston's antics, listening to the birds in the trees Charles had planted decades ago. The house behind us stood solid and secure, protected in its trust, a testament to my survival and strength. I didn't know what the future held. Maybe Robert and I would continue to rebuild until we had something resembling a real relationship again. Maybe we'd remain in this careful, boundaried space forever. Maybe something would happen that would shatter this fragile peace. But for now, in this moment, I was content. I had my home. I had my friends. I had my life, rich and full and entirely my own. And I had the knowledge that when everything fell apart, when the people I trusted most betrayed me, I'd found the strength to save myself. "You know what I've learned this past year?" I said to Robert. "What's that?" "That I'm stronger than I ever knew. That I can survive anything, even losing you. And that surviving isn't the same as merely existing. I'm not just surviving anymore, Robert. I'm living. Really living. I can see that," he said softly. "And I'm so glad." As the afternoon sun painted the garden in gold and amber, as Winston finally caught his butterfly and then immediately lost interest in it, as Robert and I sat together in this new, honest, complicated relationship we were building, I felt something I hadn't felt in a long time. Peace. Not the absence of pain. I still carried that betrayal like a scar. But peace with my choices. Peace with my strength. Peace with whatever came next. I was Eleanor Grace Thompson. I'd survived loss and betrayal. I'd protected what was mine. I'd stood up when it mattered most. And I'd learned that sometimes the bravest thing you can do is save yourself, even from the people you love most. Especially from them. The house settled around me, solid and secure, filled with memories of both joy and pain. But it was mine. Legally, irrevocably, completely mine. And so was my life. Chelsea had said that once I was gone they'd finally get the house. But I wasn't gone. I was very much here, thriving, living on my own terms. And when I eventually did leave this earth, the house would go to help people with Alzheimer's, honoring Charles's memory and doing good in the world. They'd gotten nothing from their scheme except lost relationships and shame. And I'd gotten everything that mattered. My dignity, my independence, and the knowledge that I could weather any storm. Even one brought by my own son. The breeze picked up, rustling through the garden, carrying the scent of roses and lavender. Winston bounded over and leaped into my lap, settling in with a contented purr. "I love you, Mom," Robert said quietly. "I know I don't deserve to say that anymore, but it's true." "I love you too," I replied, and I meant it. Love and hurt, forgiveness and boundaries, past and present. All of it coexisting in the complicated space of family. Thank you for giving me another chance. Thank you for doing the work to deserve it. As the sun began its descent toward the horizon, painting the sky in shades of pink and orange, I felt Charles's presence around me. Not literally, of course, but in the strength I'd found when I needed it most. In the courage to protect myself. In the wisdom to rebuild slowly and carefully. "I did it, Charles," I whispered, too quietly for Robert to hear. "I survived. I'm okay. We're gonna be okay." And for the first time in a year, I truly believed it.